Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Go Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go Toronto, go. Go Argos, go, go, go.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 6 of the Argo Bounce live audio show, a weekly talk show devoted to the CFL's 18-time Grey Cup Toronto Argonauts with co-hosts Nick Small and Chris Pomay. And I hope everyone's doing well on this Wednesday, July 17th, 2024. It's definitely a happier show for me and Nick tonight as the Argos came off an impressive upset 37-18 win at Molson Stadium last Thursday against the Montreal Alouettes. And I'm going to bring on my co-host, Nick Small. And we have a special guest here tonight from Hamilton to give us a preview of the Cats Argos game Saturday night and also talk a little bit about the 2024 Tiger Cats, or who are off to a shaky start and hope to rebound and get their first win of the season against the Argonauts Saturday night. So I'm going to bring on Nick Small first, and we'll bring on our guest. Nick, hey, how are you?
Hey, doing great, Chris. If there's any time we were going to be wrong with our picks, it was of them being upset by Montreal, and of course it went the other way around. We pulled off a big win that nobody predicted except maybe Ben Grant. A huge victory that really turns the tables on how this season might be going in the East. Had they lost that game, they'd be down 2 games, 4 points to Montreal, or 6 even, and in a worse situation. Now we're just 2 away. Montreal has the bye week, and we're now potentially if we beat Hamilton, we'll be right at par with them. So it's pretty exciting.
Before we bring our guest on, 716 Sports Blizzard podcast out of Buffalo, New York, Robbie Schneider says, good evening, Chris and Nick. Go Argos. And sorry, Rick, we've got our friend in Buffalo, New York as an Argos fan, but maybe he'll become a Cats fan at some point too. But thank you so much, Robbie, for watching. And yes, I was glad to be wrong. And got to give, before we bring on our guest tonight, I'll let you introduce him to our audience. Got to give the Argos coaching staff for having this team ready to play. And it was really all 3 units that contributed to this win. Special teams, the offense did a little bit, and the defense with Winton McManus's pick 6. But we'll talk a little bit about the Argos in a bit, but we're going to bring on our special guest tonight. And Rick, I'm going to let you, Nick, I'm going to let you introduce Rick here now.
Yep, Rick Baccaccio. Hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Baccaccio.
Good
Close enough.
But he's our special guest today. He's a Tiger Cats fan, but not just is he a Tiger Cats fan himself. He has his own podcast on TIcats Talk Network and Canadian Football Central on YouTube. So we're really happy to have another fellow guy here with some podcasting experience joining us today. And we get to talk a little bit of banter about the greatest rivalry in Canadian sports.
Hey, Rick, how are you? And before we start, you got your Tiger Cats jersey on. Which player do you have on there?
I have Stavros on this one. I got the Hammer one the other day. I wasn't planning on getting any names on it or anything, except for when I went to go purchase it. I just so happened to see Simone Lawrence walk by, and he's like, listen, I got to be in the top of the jersey sales. I know I'm not playing, but you got to put my jersey number on. And it's just like, fine. It's just, I don't know about you guys. Do you guys have a special jersey where it's like one's more than the other or no?
Yeah, this one
He's good
right here,
enough.
probably.
The blue
Pinball.
one?
Oh, the jersey, like the style itself.
No. So what I'm saying is, like, when you go into our store, like we would have like the this one and the black one at one price, and then the gray one at a different price. Do you guys have that in Toronto or no?
I don't think so now because we don't have any more of the previous generation. Ever since we switched to the Cambridge blue, the light blue primaries, we only have that one with the oars and the white one with the oars. We don't have an alternate anymore, and they've sold out of all the old ones before, like the Pinball Clemens one I have there by my head. That one's the older fan style jersey, and they don't have that anymore. So I think when they might have been on clearance, but they're all, from what I know, they're the same price.
I have the double blue Winton McManus autograph jersey, so eventually I'm gonna hopefully be able to wear that jersey. But I want to get a Terry Greer jersey, so because he's the Argos' all-time greatest receiver, and number 10 should be retired. But hey, Rick, I gotta ask you this as well. One of the longtime Tiger Cat fans passed away. I believe his name was Steve Townsend. Did you ever meet him and his mother?
So I did not meet them. I only found out about this about 2-3 weeks ago when Rick Zamperin posted it on X, and then there was the game against BC that we just played, and then probably earlier this week is when he passed. So I did not get a chance to meet him.
I think what the Cats did to honor him and his mother, Barb, was really touching, and it was just a shame the team couldn't get a win for him and his mother July 7th against the BC Lions.
I mean, we can always hope that we can beat the BC Lions. I mean, we barely beat them at home last year, and then we beat them on the road, so...
Well, the Argos haven't had much success in BC against the Lions either. So it's just maybe something in the water out west there, that it's a bit of a struggle against BC.
Well, Rick, we'll get into some questions for you. Thoughts on the Hamilton Tiger Cats 0-5 start to the season, and what is the mood like right now with the local media and the fan base such as yourself and the season ticket holders?
So I'll start with the first part, the 0-5 section of the question. As you can see, we barely lost. Let me just pull it up here. So we lost to Calgary by 8. It wasn't by much. Then we lost to Saskatchewan, which those two were the first Saskatchewan game that was at home, where we only lost by 3. That was a winnable game. Then the other Saskatchewan game we lost by 16, so we'll say possible 2-1. We lost to Ottawa on the road by 2. We could have been, 3-1, 2-2. Like this, at best we should be 2-3, if not 3-2. As far as the local media goes, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Rick Zamperin's 5th quarter call-in show.
Yes, many times I've been on it as an Argo fan, just to give my perspective, and I've had Rick Zamperin on my show a number of times, and he really does a great job, by the way. And I liked him when he was doing their play-by-play on CHML before they replaced him.
I don't know if you guys are Simpsons fans or not, but let's just bring it up this. Have you guys ever seen the Simpsons episode with the flaming pitchforks?
Oh, yeah.
That's honestly basically the TIcat fan base right now with Mark Washington, our defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I can bet that, especially after how the BC game went. With the other 2 losses, the first Saskatchewan loss, I was there at that game in Hamilton and saw it, and that was, some unfortunate mistakes. And then the Ottawa game, again, was winnable and maybe a little bit of special teams errors, and it did cost the special teams coordinator his job in Hamilton for that. But, the BC game was just tough to watch because it just seemed like the secondary was non-existent.
It's not only that, but like I was telling you guys in the little before this started, all we play is zone. We don't need to play zone. We need to play man. We got to stop giving them the 15, 20 yards gap between the goal line, not the goal line, but you know what I'm talking about, like the line in between the players and 15 yards back. And the other hated man in Hamilton besides Mark Washington is Kenneth George Jr. As much as I would hate to say it, everyone wants to see him released from the team. Other than that, we have Jamal Peters. We have 3 out of the 4 defensive line that we got from you guys, and Barlow and Hendricks. We got Sales. And then if you add Nick Usher, there's 5 veterans there. You add Stavros on special teams, Richard Leonard, and then depending on if you put Moxley at Sam or if you put him at secondary, there's everyone but the two halfbacks and the middle linebackers that are all CFL vets. So I don't get why our defense is so bad. Like, our defense should not be as bad as they should be. And like it was last year, Condell with Tommy Condell was just an old fossil that would refuse to change his playbooks. And when I don't know, Nick, I'm sure you and Chris, I don't know if you've been to TIcat games in Hamilton when Tommy Condell was our offensive coordinator.
Yes.
But Nick, I'm sure you've been to lots of TIcat games when Argos went in Hamilton. Were you able to see last year when receiver and a running back would go in, you knew it was a pass, but when the fullback and the receiver came out, you knew it was a run, but then when the fullback and the extra receiver would go in, you knew it was a pass. So you knew what Tommy Condell was going to do. But unless you change it, everyone knows what you're going to do.
Yeah, I also found what really struggled when Bo was gone last season in Hamilton was there wasn't a lot of offensive productivity moving the ball down the field. Particularly on medium and deeper passes, there was a lot more short passes and running plays. And what I've noticed more with Scott Milanovich's offense has actually, I thought, has run particularly well. I think it's reflected in Bo Levi Mitchell's passing statistics that I think he's second on most of the major rankings in things like passing yardage and touchdowns and passes beyond 15 yards and things like that. They've been able to move the ball down the field on deeper passes. So none of this I see has really reflected on Milanovich as an offensive coordinator. It's worked out quite well. A lot of the mistakes have fallen on the secondary side. And I think with the zone D, they're maybe playing a bit too passive, which is leaving guys extremely wide open, which we've seen in that BC game in particular. And that's with this matchup coming up with Toronto, I'm really curious to see how that's going to play an effect with Cam Dukes, someone who, as of this point, hasn't really thrown the ball downfield very much compared to, say, Vernon Adams last week. Dukes does not throw those deep 20, 25-yard bombs. So I'm curious to see if then is he going to make those kind of plays or attempt them more frequently.
Well, because like I was saying, if you give them that 15 yards off of scrimmage, all you got to do is throw like a hitch pass for 7-8 yards. Okay, now you're 2nd and 2, 2nd and 3, and then have Kadeem Carey run it, and there's another first down for you guys. That's as easy as it's been.
One positive I will give is that they have had. I've really liked what they've done with Litre, who's come in and has kind of like Strevler in Winnipeg, has been able to give them that sort of heavy look. And even in the sense where you have 2 quarterbacks come in, that they're able to draw a little bit of diversion to play off of. And I've seen that in their offense, like in Saskatchewan, they've been able to run a bit heavier packages and play around with that a little bit more, which we haven't seen in a while, which has been kind of a nice change of pace.
I mean, Litre's been more of like the short yardage quarterback than a running back per se.
Rick, I wanted to bring this up to you as well. Tim White, what's going on with him? He's supposed to be their number 1 receiver.
I honestly, Chris, if I knew, I would say, but so many fans, it's like I couldn't believe that he was throwing out the dollar figures of 300,000 in the offseason, because I can tell you, and I was talking to this about this the other day. If you look across the league, every team has at least one player, like their star wide receiver, that has gone through a slump. Edmonton has it with Eugene Lewis. We have it with Tim White. Calgary has it with Reggie Begelton. Ottawa had it with Rhymes. Like, it seems like all of the star players are going down and all of the youth and rookie players are going up. Like, look at Samar Bridges. No one knew who Samar Bridges was before this year, and the guy's what, 4th or 5th and all receiving, and he's a rookie.
Now, the game against the Argos, obviously it's a QEW rivalry. They hate each other's guts. Maybe not to like when I grew up in the 70s and 80s, but this is going to be a huge game. And I don't care if I'm an Argos fan or not, I expect Hamilton to come out and play their best game of the year. And then the CFL, Rick and Nick, it's an 18-game season, 5 games. It's not the end of the world. You can rebound. Is this a must win for the Hamilton TIcats, regardless if they're playing the Argos or not Saturday night?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Chris. The TIcats always have this belief that our regular season does not start until after Labor Day. Period. Even last year, we were horrible last year, and after Labor Day, we went on the winning streak. I would say because we play you guys this week, we play Edmonton, then we play Montreal back-to-back. If we don't have at least 2 wins within those 4 games, you might as well just... Because then by then, you guys would have picked up probably a victory or 2. Ottawa, like, we're already 4 points behind.
Actually, I think 6.
I'm saying from 3rd place.
Okay.
Yeah, like, we're already 13. We're already 4 points behind.
Fine.
And then if you really want to think about it, then we would have to battle with the 4th place in the West, because there's always that possible crossover too. So, I mean, we're technically not out, but I mean, we have to start winning and play like games. Then with Cody Fajardo with the hamstring injury, you don't know how bad that hamstring injury is, because you know Caleb Evans can't throw the long balls in down the field like Cody Fajardo does. So now what's going to end up happening with Montreal over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, with the buffer that Montreal has because of their good start out of the gate, it definitely provides Montreal an opportunity where if Fajardo is kind of iffy, let's say this after the bye week, he's still maybe a little questionable or needs an extra week, they can afford to rest him for a game, plan it with Evans, and yeah, maybe they don't win, but it's still, Montreal still stays in a fairly strong position. If not, and they rush Fajardo in and it things go really bad, it could derail the whole season. Montreal has that time to afford. It looks like, and right now the other thing too is we can't sleep on Ottawa either. Coming into this week, they are tied with us, the Argonauts, for 2nd place, and they play Edmonton in a rematch at home. And I think at home, Ottawa's got to be a pretty favored matchup, even with the coaching changes in Edmonton. So it's a lot for Hamilton to come out of an 0-5 gap where the 2 teams that they're trying to catch are already up to 3 wins. So they really need, this game is huge for Hamilton if they want to get back into things.
I don't know if you guys have looked at it, but for you guys, are there any players on your, because you guys are one of the teams that have the most 6 players on the 6 game. Is there anyone that's close to coming back for you guys?
Nick?
I was at practice today. The guy who I think, honestly looks probably the most likely would probably be Kevin Mittal. And even then, I still think he's probably at least another week or 2 away. Actually, Tunde Adeleke took some reps in practice too today, now that I think about it. And then I'm not sure about the O-line.
What about Jake Sorenza, the defensive end from Edmonton?
Well, Sorenza was only on the 1-game list. Fortunately, He looked full in practice. So whatever his shoulder injury was, that forced him to sit out the Montreal game. It looks like he'll be good to go. But everybody else, I mean, just looking at it now, Flora Malade did not look ready at all. Dejon Brissett, I didn't see him in crutches anymore, fortunately, but he's taking a lot of rehab. Quincy Moget, Kerfala Exume, Darius Sirocco, Jamie Harry, Dylan Giffen, Daniel Cuomo, they were all, they're all taking, they were all doing the rehab exercises together on the far end of the field. So other than Serezna and maybe a Adeleke, I can't see anybody coming in, and I'm not even sure if they would bother putting a Adeleke in right away. I think there's, with the way Royce Mechie has been playing right now, I think you still want him in as safety right now.
So the reason why I brought that up is because we actually had practice begin on Sunday, but then we didn't have practice on Monday. And when I went on Sunday, we had Jordan Murray from our offensive line practicing with the ones. He's still on the 6th game, but then Will Sutherland was getting some practice out there too, but he wasn't with the ones. So, I mean, those are 2 people that are on our 6th game. So if anyone would probably be playing in Saturday's game, I'd probably bet my money on Murray, but it's not 100% yet. And hopefully Stavros' injury isn't as bad, because I didn't see him on the injury list, on the CFL.ca injury list. So if anything, he may be like a 1 game, if that. And Richard Leonard is most likely to be back for us this week.
Yeah, it's a good point to note, just that with the way, for any of our listeners, with the way the schedule is, there is a 6-game injury list, and a lot of guys have been put on the 6-game injury list at the start of the season. This would now kind of be the timeline where they might be coming back, but you can keep guys longer on that injury list.
But Mike Hogan was saying, just because somebody's on 6-game list doesn't mean they have to stay on 6 games.
Yeah, it's not hardline into it. The challenge is that you can take a guy off early on it, but the salary cap applies retroactively. So if you don't have that cap space, you'd rather keep them on for longer, because then if you do, then you're going into those complications of being above the cap, and it could lead to fines or further discipline, loss of draft picks or whatnot in the future. So you're really wanting to take that longer route at keeping them on that list as long as you can, if they're not 100% ready to play again.
Hey, Rick, I wanted to ask you this, and I've heard some rumors, and I don't believe it. Obviously, the way Bo Levi Mitchell has been playing this year, and I was going to ask you about Bo Levi Mitchell, how well he's done with you guys. There's been rumors that the Edmonton Elks could trade Trey Ford. We all know that. But one of the teams that was rumored would be Hamilton. But I don't understand why you would bring him in there when you have a good backup quarterback behind Bo Levi Mitchell as well. Do you see any possibility that Ed Harvey, the former Elk or Eskimo, could work out a trade for Trey Ford? Go ahead.
So here's the thing with that is the whole overall assessment. It's blown my mind of how well Bo's been playing this year. Like, except for the first Calgary game, he's at least thrown over 300 yards, bare minimum. He started slow, but then he started to come around. As far as that goes, don't forget, Bo signed for next year. Powell signed for next year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris and Nick. When you sign a player off your negotiations list, is he only signed for this year or no?
That's a good question.
Do you guys know that? The reason why I bring that up is because don't forget, we just signed Tula's brother.
Yes.
That plays for Miami. No, is it Miami that he plays for in the NFL? I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he plays for the Dolphins. But anyways, we just signed his brother off of our negotiation list.
It was Miami.
So I honestly think if anything's going to end up happening, it's probably going to be the whole thing with Nick Schultz last year. But Nick Schultz left as a free agent. I think it will probably take Tua's brother at least a full season to learn Orlando's style, not only Canadian football, but a whole team's offensive playbook.
Absolutely.
So it would not surprise me to see, if anything, maybe Powell, again, this is just me guessing, because I don't know if you've seen it, Chris, about the whole thing with Trey Ford, but did you see the tweet that was sent out about he does not want to play for Edmonton?
No, he does.
Yeah,
They've tried to run plays for him. He wants out. Basically, he wants out, and it's not good for that team to have a malcontent. So Trey Ford, I think we're gonna. Nick, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's not fair to say he wants out. But this thing is, if he doesn't want to run just a couple plays here and there, he either wants to be the starter and play the entire game, or not play. That's the sentiment I'm getting. So and what I find is the big challenge this year is, compared to last year, we're not in a situation where the CFL is weak on quarterbacks. It's not like last year where Ottawa was down to their third string quarterback and could potentially be a candidate. Toronto's looked fine. Hamilton's looked fine. The only team I could maybe see is Calgary, but I think they're too committed into Jake Maier. Everybody else has their guy. So, and even if Fajardo's injury is longer term, let's say Fajardo's 4 weeks out, you're not going to make a huge trade, give up a ton of stuff for Trey Ford to have him play for 4 weeks with the knowledge that as Fajardo's good to go, he's going to be replaced.
He will not finish the season in Edmonton, Nick. We're going to disagree with you. They want him out of there. If you don't want to be a team player, it's not going to make for a good environment.
Where's he going to play? No one's going to trade for him unless his
I mean, you could always trade for him and then bring him in as a backup like next year and do like short yardage or something with another team. But let me throw this out to you, Chris. With him being drafted 3 years ago, he had a really good year last year. Like, do you honestly blame him for speaking out for what he has, for not getting a fair opportunity?
I totally agree. But Chris Jones doesn't like young quarterbacks. Chris Jones, from what I see, preferred the veteran quarterbacks, and that's why he brought in McLeod Bethel-Thompson, who I think has played well with Edmonton, and his teammates like him. But you got a problem right now with the fan base. The fan base, it's sort of like McLeod Bethel-Thompson went through this in Toronto. Nick knows this too. When he was in Toronto, it was Chad Kelly. Now in Edmonton, they're training for Trey Ford. So I do feel Ford will be moved. Which team? I'm not sure, or where he's going to end up. But I do think Trey Ford can be a good quarterback in the CFL if he gets an opportunity. But like Nick said, Ottawa's solved their quarterback issues with Drew Brown. Hamilton's got Bo Levi and Mitchell, who's rebounded. Toronto's quarterback play has been okay with Cameron Duke so far. And then BC's got their guy, and we'll see what happens in Montreal. But you know what? If Fajardo is out 4 weeks, 6 weeks, Trey Ford could end up with Montreal possibly at some point.
Yeah, I just don't see it. And I mean, like, in a lot of ways, Edmonton and Hamilton are very similar because they have the exact same problem. Bo Levi Mitchell and McLeod Bethel-Thompson, let alone Trey Ford, none of those guys can play defensive back. And that's what's costing them right now. Edmonton and Hamilton are near the bottom of almost all the major defensive statistics. Points allowed, net offense, yards given up, rush yards, pass yards, all those things are near the bottom of the list on. And so their problems primarily stand with defensive problems. And that's part of what led to the departure of Chris Jones. We saw just with his last stint in Edmonton and when he signed in Saskatchewan, he was lauded as the all-knowing Chris Jones. And unfortunately, their defense was absolutely terrible. And it falls down if you're going to have a defensive head coach with a defense that is going to allow the opponents to drive a bus through it every night. You can't have that happen. So I don't think it's, unfortunately, the problem they've got is with the Trey Ford thing is that there's just not enough opportunities available in the league right now the way it is, unless something catastrophic happens to one of the starting quarterbacks within the league. I just don't see there being
Montreal or Saskatchewan. Montreal or Saskatchewan, I think.
I was just gonna say Trevor Harris is up there in age. I'm sure he doesn't have much. Well, obviously, with him getting injured again, I can't see him doing another like full season, like do like a number like A1, like 1A, 1B type thing. I could even see him, like I see him better than Shea Patterson in Saskatchewan, but that's just me.
By the way, the last Elks loss, I'm not putting it on the defense. I put it on, unfortunately, Boris Beatty kicked the ball out of bounds when he didn't need to. And that basically set up Ottawa with great field position, and boom, one play done. So, you know what? It's just the Elks and the Cats, from what I see. They've been in a lot of games. They could have 2-3 wins each for each team. They just don't know how to win games, and there's a fine line in football between winning and losing, and you know this, Nick and Rick as well.
There's no lead is a good lead, is how I put it.
No lead is safe.
But Chris, I come back to you with a question. Do you think it was Boris Beatty that kicked it out, or did Chris Jones tell him to kick it out of bounds?
Well, see, before that, he kicked the ball 98 yards into the end zone for a Rouge. He has one of the strongest legs. He's one of the best kickers in the CFL. And from his body language, I think he knew he made a mistake there. And as soon as that ball went out of bounds, you knew Ottawa had enough time, 16 seconds. And the way Drew Brown played in that game, took one good throw, and then boom, they have a very good field goal kicker in Ottawa, as you guys know, and boom, 50 yards later, they win the game. So Edmonton, give them credit. They came back and rallied, but again, they didn't make enough plays at the end of the game to win, and you can't do that. Nick?
Well, I already made my comments on the kick on social media, but the other thing that I think a lot of people are forgetting is that they chose to run the bunch play, and they had time to kill the clock down to zeros to run it, and they chose to snap it with 8 seconds left on the clock. So it's those little things that added up in these last couple of games that where Edmonton was giving up those walk-off field goals for the win, and it has to come down to coaching at some point. You can't have these little things keep going on game after game after game where you're pointing, oh, it was this player's fault this week, and oh, it was this player's fault that week, and it was this player's fault the next week. At some point, you have to hold the coach accountable, and that's what Edmonton ultimately chose to do with replacing Chris Jones.
And that leads to my next question, Rick. Thoughts on head coach Scott Milinovich? And is he feeling any kind of pressure from the media and fan base in Hamilton yet?
So here's how I look at it as it. If there's going to be any other changes in Hamilton, it's going to be the defensive coordinator, because if you say fire Scott Milinovich, you now have to go out and find an offensive coordinator. You now have to go out and find a head coach, and I just think that it's the defensive coordinator is an easier position to replace than it is an offensive coordinator, because now you have to retrain. Now you have to use someone else's playbook, and we just dealt with this with Scott Milinovich last year. As Milinovich joined in halfway through the season last year when Tommy Condell got fired. Then everyone had to use Tommy Condell's playbook for the rest of the year. Then they reincorporated a whole new playbook in the offseason this year. It's just like, all I think is it's just like to get like the whole saying, to get the monkey off your back. You just need that one victory. And then once you get that one victory, then you'll start to see the players come around.
Yeah, let's not forget too about how it's going to affect the coach's cap, because as you mentioned, Tommy Condell's been let go. Orlando Steinauer moved up, so I'm not too entirely sure if that affects the football operations cap that the league has set for coaches. I imagine it probably wouldn't, as opposed to like a firing, but anyways, I don't know the full details about
that's
stuff.
That's another thing is, if you let Mark Washington go, just bring Orlando Steinauer up from above and then just place him in, because he used to be our defensive coordinator before he took over as head coach
from Ken Austin.
Yeah. So I mean, the bodies are there. It's just even when they let go of Paul Boudreau, 2 weeks ago, last week, even though we lost to BC, you could already see new things coming up. Like we're getting more yards on the returns. We weren't getting that little Peasley 10 yards per kick return or whatnot. Like we're getting like 15, 16, 20 yards. Like obviously it's not going to happen overnight, but eventually. The only thing that I will say about Scott Milanovic and the media that's driving me nuts, because I watched his little presser today that he does after each game or each practice, is they always say, we got to work on this. Oh, we got to work on this. And it's, if we can fix this up and do this and that. You say it every day, every practice, every game after, every week after each game. It's just like, do it and then fix the problems. Figure out what the problems are, first of all, and fix them. Obviously, you're not fixed because if you, and I'll take the BC game, for example, if you make 6 changes like they did in BC game, and the defense isn't properly, then it's the defense. You can't blame it all on. Okay, you can blame it on the players, but not all on the players. At what point do you look at the coaching staff and say, okay, Mark Washington, I know you're the defensive coordinator and assistant head coach, but like it's time to go. Like, at what point do you look at it, the coach, and say, okay, it's not. If we can't bring in the players, then we obviously have to look at the coaching staff. Like, look at it. You had Calgary release Titus Wall. He was available. McFadden. What's going on with McFadden? McFadden's been with 2 teams this year. Go out and sign McFadden. You had Sean Oakman out there available for how long? Dedrick Moncrief. Like, you have the bodies there, and yet we have Kyle Wilson, who has maybe a year or 2 of experience at middle linebacker. We're playing 2 players that played down south that Wilburn was playing for the Broncos on their practice roster. You're bringing up all these cheap players because you got to make up space somewhere because you're overpaying for players at certain positions. So you got to go pay league minimum for players at other positions. It's just, and then don't even get me started when they released Terry Godwin because he wasn't a big receiver. Like he almost put up 1,000 yards last year, and
has anybody picked him up yet?
No one has picked him up from what
Really?
with what I've seen.
I'm surprised.
Because the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I look on Twitter to see what news has happened, what signings have happened, and no one has picked him up yet.
It almost seems more a case of that they're trying to fit players into a too rigid a structure, a defensive system, a scheme, rather than trying to adjust the scheme to play to the strengths of the players they have in it.
It's not even that, Nick. It's Scott Milanovic, his system, because he's adapting the whole tight end package from the States, that he doesn't want small receivers on the team, period. Like, I think, like, the smallest...
Sorry, I was talking more defensively than offensively.
No, I'm just saying, with going back to Chris's question with the whole thing. Besides them just signing Devin Harris as our new returner, he's 5'7". You don't have anyone smaller than 5'10" on our receivers. Like, everyone's 6 foot or taller.
Yeah, I noticed that how they line up in the Saskatchewan game as well. They're lining up with a lot of extra backs and that sort of heavy tight end look, which has been kind of different from what we've seen in the CFL the last couple of years. Not many teams run that except for on short yardage plays anymore.
Hey, Rick, I wanted to ask you this.
Sure.
It's a hypothetical question. Simone Lawrence is like your pinball version in Hamilton of Pinball Clements. Obviously, he's retired. Is there any chance he could come back as a defensive coordinator or go on the coaching staff, or do you think he wants to just stay out of it for now?
So basically, I don't know what the viewers or listeners know about Simone, but he's actually the Hamilton ambassador. So he's like how you guys have the MLSE, where you guys have Raptors, Maple Leafs, Toronto Blue Jays, and the Argos. Basically, he's the Hamilton ambassador for the Hamilton sports teams. So you need someone to go and do like a PR thing. He does that. He does a pregame show with Courtney Stevens on the TIcats Network. To be honest, I was kind of hoping for him to come back as a linebackers coach because, I mean, outside of Mark Washington, Gibson, our offensive line coach, and our kind of quarterbacks coach, all the new coaches on the team are all new.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you bring in that many coaches, if it's a coaching thing where they need to gel more with their players. If they don't, what it is. But at some point, I mean, it has to be a coaches because, I mean, you brought in Benoit Marion, you brought in Nick Usher, Hendricks, Luther Hadnakanoon. I'm not even going to try to pronounce Luther's last name, but Luther, Brandon Barlow, like Devontae Knight from you guys. Like, the list goes on. Like, at what point is it that you have to point fingers and say, okay, coaches, like, someone has to go?
Hey, Rick, before we get to the last question and that,
sure.
You mentioned something before. If you like the charity event with one of the Argo guys, yeah, please bring it on.
Okay, so those people who don't know, there is an Argo fan by the name of Ginger Argo that sell these patches. The CFL Fights Cancer. He sells them for $5 a piece. It goes towards a good cause. So if you see him, he's going to be at with what I've been told, every road Argo game and every home Argo game. Go and buy one. They're nice patches. I haven't put them on my patch yet, but I got a couple of them. And the money goes to a good cause to fight the battle against cancer. Also, our good friends, as me and Nick both know, Connor Suve, as I keep on getting yelled at for pronouncing his name.
I did it too. It's okay.
If you go on Sauve Connor on Twitter, he's actually doing a walk the Saturday of Labor Day from BMO Field to Tim Hortons Field the Saturday. And yes, he is crashing at my house because I told him because he needs a full day of rest before he goes to the Labor Day Classic. But if you go on his Twitter, it's SOUVE Connor on Twitter. There's a link there for people that want to donate to the whole CFL Fights Cancer.
I'll also add to that Chris Timofichuk. I don't know if you've seen on as well. He's the guy who's been going to every stadium trying to break the Guinness World Record. He's also been collecting money for CFL fans fight cancer as well. So we've got 3 really great guys doing some amazing initiatives right now to fundraise money to help in the fight against cancer. And
I'm not doing the full walk. I will be honest with you. I'm going to be at all the stops providing people with water and protein bars, but I will be joining in the last leg from Burlington to Hamilton.
And Nick's going to do the 65-kilometer walk because he's 27. He's 27 and he's fit. So Nick's going to be doing the 65-kilometer walk.
I'll follow the route in my minivan.
But I'm going to be at every 10-kilometer stop to provide water and protein bars up until the last leg. And then I'm parking my car in Burlington, and then I'm going to walk, and then I'll take the train back and go pick up my car.
Well, we definitely have the best waterfront on the planet to go do it. There's a lot of really nice areas here to go walking through. So
just hopefully it doesn't rain and it's a flood. In that,
yeah. Well, when you get to Mississauga, it's not too bad by the lake. There's some pretty sandy soil here. It's when you start going west of there through to Oakville and Burlington, then it starts to get a little nasty again.
All right, Rick. Before we wrap it up for your appearance on here, what are some keys? You're a season ticket holder since 2019, by the way.
Yes.
What are some keys for a Tiger Cats win over Toronto on Saturday night at Tim Hortons Field from your perspective?
Okay, I have 3. One is not to give the Toronto's offense much yards off of the offensive line. 2 is going to be to obviously outscore Toronto, because whoever has the most points wins, and try to hold Toronto. I know it's not going to be possible, but try to hold Toronto under, for the love of God, try to hold Toronto under 30 points, because we are averaging 30 points against in each game. So try to hold Toronto under the 30 points. But I have a bounce back question for both of you guys before I leave. What version of Cameron Dukes are we gonna get this weekend? Are we gonna get the one that played against Montreal, or are we gonna get the one that played against Sask where he threw 4 interceptions?
I was gonna
go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm surprised you didn't. One of your keys was force Cam Dukes to throw 5 interceptions. But yeah, I think we're gonna get the good Cam Dukes, the calm, collected, take what he's given, not try to force things. I think he's learned his lesson from that Saskatchewan game. Chris, go ahead.
One of the keys for Hamilton, Kadeem Carey is healthy. He's been a workhorse for the Toronto Argonauts, and I think taking away Kadeem Carey would be huge, because I think he's going to have a monster game against you guys, or you guys might do a nice job, but I think he's one of the keys. And another guy is on special teams, Giovanni, what's his name? Grant.
Janarian Grant.
Oh, God.
Janarian Grant. He's the last 2 games I've predicted touchdowns, and I think the Hamilton's going to have to do a good job on all 3 sides of the ball, special teams, defense, and offense. But to me, you want to contain Carey and Grant, because both those guys will eat you up if you don't contain them.
And one thing that I will say is penalties.
Discipline.
For both teams.
Yes.
Yeah.
But one last question, and I promise. If for some reason Hamilton pulls out the victory,
I wouldn't be shocked. I would not be shocked.
Would you? So you would not be embarrassed that your team lost to an 0-5 team?
We've had the Argos many times have played teams where they were winless and they've lost. And there's been times where the Argos have come into Hamilton or somewhere where they were winless many, many years ago and win. Anything can happen in the Canadian Football League on any given night.
That is true.
If you do win, you may not be friends with Owen anymore, but that just means you're friends with Juan.
And Rick, finally, for our audience on the Argo Bounce Live audio show, and they wish to follow you on social media, the website, and just where they can find your podcast shows and YouTube channels.
Yes, so you can find me on Twitter at FMFan9. Also on YouTube, me and my co-host Carter Nolan, we do weekly and previews and reviews of each week. If you go on there, we have 10 episodes of players that we've interviewed. And also on Friday, we are going to be doing a live stream of the Saskatchewan-Winnipeg game. As far as TIcat news and things like that, you can find me on YouTube at TIcats Talk Network.
And make sure you hit that subscribe notification on YouTube.
Yes.
Hey, Rick, I won't be able to come to the game Saturday because I'm going to Buffalo Sunday.
That's okay.
For the Buffalo Bisons, but I'll be watching on TSN. I am going to come down to a game this year as media, and when I do, I will let you know because I'd like to meet you in person as well.
Speaking of which, so just so that you know, Chris, I'm in section 101.
Okay.
I've met Nick plenty of times in Toronto. I will be sending you a message on Twitter, Chris, because I do have a question to ask you off camera about the whole media thing. So I do have a question for that. So I will be sending you a message probably either tonight or tomorrow regarding that.
Okay. Well, Nick, do you have a final question for Rick before we wrap this up?
Nope. All I'm gonna just say is thank you for coming on. I've been
no problem.
I want to chat with you on the show for a long time, and I think we've had some great discussions as you mentioned, at Argos games and stuff. So I'm really glad that we're able to finally bring it in person live stream and being able to banter like this. It's great to have that a little wedge in that friendly rivalry and be able to play.
Oh, don't worry. I've had a few people when me and Connor are at games. How are you an Argo and a TIcat friends? Don't ask me.
Back in the 80s, you would never see it. You would see batteries and weapons thrown at the fans. It was real hostile.
Oh, I've heard some horror stories about that.
Oh, yes, I witnessed it. So, yeah, it's mellowed. The rivalry has mellowed out over the years, just like I have.
Yeah, because no one's going to pour an $18 beer on someone else.
Good point. Speaking of beer, you guys owe me, well, not Rick, but Nick, you now owe me 3 beers for getting Rick on tonight.
Okay. Chris, I will make you a deal.
Just joking.
Oh, I will make you a deal though. When do I think we play you guys not until September 20th.
Okay.
Yeah,
when I come out to Toronto, I will definitely, for having me on, I will definitely get you a beer.
Oh, you don't need to do that. I was just saying. But I was going to say, since you're in Hamilton, what's your favorite beer at a Tiger Cats game?
To be honest with you, I'm not a beer drinker. I'm more of a mixed drink.
Okay.
More of a rum and Coke type person. But the one thing I wanted to say that I mentioned earlier, it's been forever since we've seen Toronto and Hamilton play. This is game 1. Game 2 is Labor Day, and game 3 is in Toronto, September 20th.
And those might be playoff type games by September.
Like I said, real season starts after Labor Day.
I would say this year for Hamilton, it starts July 20th with Toronto. Because you're right. Because once you get that first win and monkey off your back, maybe the team will develop some confidence and you know what I mean. So and it would save Mark Washington's job, because I feel if they lose to Toronto and their defense plays poorly, they have to let Mark Washington go. So he's on a hot seat, big time.
Man, going from the when and going to the if, Chris, it all sounds like you're picking the TIcats to win this week.
It's not going to be an easy game. It's not going to be an easy game. The rivalry, and you can throw the records out. Even Mike Hogan and Ben Grant would say this. Throw the records out. It's going to be a very competitive, close game. I think it's going to come down to a field goal.
The Argos aren't taking them lightly, given the way they practiced at practice today. They looked really solid. So I will say that.
I actually just looked. I was trying to see what the over-under was for the points, but they have you guys as a 2.5 spread favorite.
Yeah.
I have the Argos winning this game 23-20. It's going to be a less than 3-point or less game.
Oh,
yeah,
so
FanDuel, it's 52.5 for the over/under right now, and Argos are 3 favorites.
So Chris is bringing back the whole Edmonton thing, because if you think about it, Edmonton has lost every game but one by 3 points. So you're saying that this is going to be an Edmonton kind of loss where we lose by 3 points.
And I think turnovers are going to be a factor in this game too, and penalties too.
As long as it does not come down to last under 3 minutes, I'm good. I'm sick and tired of all the games recently coming down to the last 3 minutes.
It's like the NBA games. You can just tune out until the last 3 minutes, and you can watch the entire game in 3 minutes.
Well, I don't know about that. There's been a lot of back and forth action going throughout some of these games. So I think one thing that it's been an absolute home run for the CFL this summer. As much as we've complained about the gate-driven league having the Thursday games, the Sunday night games, where maybe not the best convenience for fans, it has done an extremely good number on their TV revenue on TSN, having 4 nights a week in the summer, where a lot of these nights there's almost no competition, because it's like you're watching a soccer match on the other side of the planet, or you're watching an Aussie rules football match on the other side of the planet. So
I will leave off on this note before I let you guys get on to your Toronto news. Have you guys heard the news that Vernon Adams and Bo Levi Mitchell are both apparently on pace for a 6,000-yard season?
Wow. I did. I don't know if it'll keep up, but I think it was the stats they were showing. I think it was Doug Flutie and one other quarterback in 2000 or 96. I think it was that year was the last time that happened.
Apparently, Vernon Adams, they say his 6,000 is supposed to be 6,000 yards, over 6,000, 40 touchdowns, and under 10 interceptions. I don't know what they have for Bo, but Bo is supposed to be on pace for 6,000 yards. And there's only, get this, there's only 600 yards difference between the two of them, give or take.
Yeah.
And BC's on the bye next week, and we play Edmonton. So next week will be the time for us to catch up to Vernon Adams.
So, well, Rick, hey, I want to say thank you so much for coming on episode 6 of the Argo Bounce live audio show tonight. And you have an open invite to come back on again, and maybe you can come back on when the Cats are back in Toronto in September.
That sounds like a plan.
All
Thanks,
right. Well, Rick, thank you so much for coming on here, and good luck to your Tiger Cats Saturday night against the Argonauts, and looking forward to seeing you this summer, either at Hamilton or at BMO Field.
All I have to say is, at least in Hamilton or Toronto, we don't have to listen to those stupid horns.
Or that Hamilton chant, Oski wee wee.
Hey, listen, you guys listen to that. We got to listen to your guys' touchdown song.
So,
well, you guys got the Arcals. You guys got the Arcal song.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I will let you guys get on to the rest of your show, and I do appreciate allowing me to stop by.
Thank you so much,
Rick.
and we'll talk to you soon, and enjoy the game Saturday night at Tim Hortons Field.
You too.
Thanks, buddy. All right, Nick, thoughts on our guest Rick tonight?
Yeah, well, like I said earlier, I've been wanting to have him on the show for a long time, and especially because he comes from the same background as us as a podcaster and commentator. It's made for just such great commentary, and that we're able to just have some nice banter, speculate a little bit. It's everything you want that in a guest. So it's worked out really well.
See, I always get you guests. I get your favorite player, Damon Allen, and tonight we got Rick, and who knows, maybe we'll get Ricky Ray one day.
Yeah, who knows? It'd be awesome to have him on.
Hey, so, and I hope you can listen to my show on Monday or watch it later, because Dave Campbell from CHED 630 in Edmonton's gonna come on and talk about the Elks, and Chris Jones, and hopefully they can get that first win against Ottawa. But I was very impressed with Drew Brown against Edmonton, and like we said, Nick, there's no gimme games in the Canadian Football League.
Yeah, at one point that I forgot to mention with the whole Edmonton thing, that's even more embarrassing about that, like about having a defensive coach whose defense collapsed. Don't forget, they had a 16-day bye week, and they played a quarterback who came off concussion protocol that threw for 400 yards. Like that was, I think, that point about it also kind of spelled the writing on the wall as the final nail in the coffin. I'm running out of analogies to use, but yeah. So, and we're already an hour through, and we haven't even talked about last week's Argonauts win or the Bill Manning story, which has been, in a way, its own sort of shockwave.
Did you want to bring that up a bit for Bill Manning?
One thing I won't elaborate a ton into it tonight, because actually one thing I'm looking forward to announcing here right now is that I am going to be doing one of my first ever video essays that I've got planned, going on a new YouTube channel I created. It's exactly the same as my Twitter account, Nick Small 38. I'll be posting it once I get it live, hopefully tomorrow, if not Friday. And it's going to be like a little slideshow video essay presentation, diving specifically into the Bill Manning thing, the replacement of the Argos president, and the challenges that whoever's coming in as president faces. So I've just got my slides up now, briefly looking at it, and kind of just, obviously the thing right now is do we see a separate TFC and Argos president? And I think Keith Pelley knows enough from his experience as Argo's president back in the day in the mid 2000s that he knows they need to be separate roles. But at the same point, what's going to be a challenge is that the Argos are still not a top priority in MLSE. When you've got the Raptors that are worth $4 billion, when you've got the Leafs that are worth at least $1 billion, if not two, you've got the soccer club, TFC, is worth almost $1 billion themselves. You're not going to care about an Argos franchise, put a ton of resources into them when they're probably not even 30 million. So that's part of the challenge. But at the same point, there's some big keys that are going to be coming up, specifically the 2026 FIFA World Cup, how that's going to displace the team for at least a couple months, if not the entire season, and how you manage the move back post all the renovations and everything going on. So those are the kind of things I'll be talking about in more depth tomorrow or Friday. So keep a look on my social media to talk about it.
What's the YouTube channel name?
It's exactly the same as my Twitter, Nick Small 38. So I don't have anything up on it yet. So if you try searching it, you probably won't see anything.
Okay.
Because it's completely brand new account, and I will have that up, as I said, hopefully in the next day or two.
All right. Hey, let's try to wrap this up in 10 minutes. So we'll get to some questions.
Lots of
We'll try to wrap it up in 10 minutes if we can. Just quick thoughts on the Argonauts upset win 38-17 over the Grey Cup champion Alouettes, and they gave up 15 points in the first half and they bent. But what I liked in the second half is they only gave up 3 points. And I know Montreal had some key player injuries and Cody Fajardo, but the Argos, for the first time this year, defensively kept another team from under 30 points. So, and Wynton McManus had that pick six interception. So just quick thoughts on their upset win over the Alouettes, which we were both wrong about.
Yep. As you've said, the defensive play was exceptional, which was the huge turnaround. The thing that's going to be lost, and I notice I have a knack for picking out the thing that's going to be lost in a game with how the Argos played, is that they held Fajardo in that first quarter. I think they scored a rouge, and I think that was it. So one of the things was right out of the gate, they shut down Cody Fajardo leading the Alouettes offense. And it wasn't until Caleb Evans came in that they allowed some points on the board. And even then, it wasn't very much. And they made the adjustments at halftime with the backup quarterback, which goes to show in past games where they've been killed by a backup guy coming in, most notably the week before against Saskatchewan. So they were able to make those adjustments quick enough. They shut down the Alouettes offense, and also give a tremendous amount of credit to Janarian Grant and the special teams, because not only did he have I think it was a 107-yard kickoff return touchdown, he positioned Cam Dukes at midfield almost every possession, which when you converse it to the Saskatchewan game, contrasted there, they were in long field around their own 20, 30-yard line most drives, and Saskatchewan had the ball midfield most of the time. This time, Toronto had the ball midfield most of the time, and Montreal had to work from within. In the case of the McManus pick, they were within their own 2-yard line. So that's the kind of thing that wins you games. Even if you're not returning it for TDs, you're setting them up for great field position. So that special teams was absolutely incredible at setting the Argonauts up to succeed all night.
And I like the fact that the Argos were able to run the ball. Kadeem Carey is a workhorse. They obviously had Oboye and McManus. And to me, Kadeem Carey is an unsung hero on this team this year. And it seems like the more they feed him the ball, the stronger he gets. And that takes a lot of pressure off Cam Dukes as well. And I like the fact they set Dukes up to succeed in this game. He made the right decisions, and he didn't have to play hero ball to win this game. So I want to give a shout out to the entire Argonauts coaching staff for having team ready to play. And the offensive line gets credit too, because they did a great job with the running game. So my stars of the game were Javarian Grant, Carey, and McManus. but the offensive line should get a star of the game too, because this team, I think, has one of the best offensive lines in football. And Cam Dukes played well, but he didn't have to, like I said, play hero ball. And when you play a clean game, Nick, when you cut down the penalties, I think they only had 6 penalties in this game, and I don't think they had any turnovers. You're going to win football games. And I think if the Argos don't turn the ball over and take too many penalties, I think they can still win games this year going forward.
Yeah, the offensive line definitely gets a shout out because that's the big part of why this run game has been so successful and why AJ Ouellette's kind of being forgotten now in Toronto, because the old line is what set up such an exceptional back like Kadeem Carey to succeed, who just 2 years ago was one of the top runners in the CFL. And then the other thing I want to point out is that this game gave a lot of guys on the offense confidence again. Cam Dukes only 180 yards passing, but because he played clean, he didn't make many mistakes. It gave him a lot of confidence, what he needed. And I think it got Tavares Daniels, who scored that one touchdown in the corner early in the first half. It gave him, I think, some confidence again after coming back in off of being injured and not quite as present as he's been the last couple of weeks this season. So yeah, and I mean, yeah, between McManus and Grant as well, those are definitely fitting stars. They were exceptional.
And that was the first Argonauts defensive score of the season, and that was huge. That got them going, and to me, Went McManus, that was a huge play there too. So yeah, and we'll see what happens. But those are my 3 stars for this game. But I'll tell you, the Argonauts offensive line, when they get that running game going, it opens up everything else. And it was nice to see DeMonte Coxey get a touchdown too in this game.
Yeah, and I mean, with going back to the O-line again, they've looked good since day one in camp. Like we watched the preseason games, and they were able to steamroll the ball against Montreal and Hamilton then as well. So they only had that one struggle in that game against Saskatchewan, but other than that, they've been exceptional with their run game, and it's schemed really well for it.
All right, Nick, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What are some keys to an Argos win at Tim Hortons Field on Saturday night?
Number one, I would say, looking back at how it went in the camp game, get to bowl early, because what I noticed in that, when you look back at the preseason game, and I know different lineups and rosters and this and that, but it was only until the late third quarter that Hamilton had a drive more than a 2 and out. I think every single Hamilton drive was a 2 and out through 3 quarters of play in that preseason game. So this defense knows they can get to Bo Levi Mitchell, and I think you want to challenge him into throwing those deep balls, especially early game, because you saw in the BC game, he tried throwing the ball deep early to no availability. So I think if you can do that, force Hamilton out quick, have your offense out, and have some longer productive drives, keep their offense off the field, you're going to play them behind the 8 ball again, like they were in BC, where they were down 14-0, not even 5 minutes in the game. And then all hell's just going to break loose in Hamilton when the fans start booing after every little thing. So I think BC's is the model you want to go off of, to how they played Hamilton offensively to shut it down. And yeah, I just don't think they have the ability to come back after being in such a big deficit early on.
My keys are, number 1, stop the run. James Butler, who's capable of having a huge game. I think if you could stop the run and force the Cats into being one-dimensional, will be huge. And number 2 is discipline. If the Argos can just, because guys are going to get heated from this game. The 2 teams don't like each other. The fan bases don't like each other. I think discipline will be number 2. And my third key is going to be a fast start. If the Argonauts can get off to a fast, strong start and have the Hamilton fans turn on their team, that will be a key as well.
Yeah, Butler doesn't really worry me quite as much. He had, like in the BC game, he had 9 carries for 27 yards, so he only had 3 yards to carry. I think what's been the good part of Hamilton has been Bo Levi Mitchell being able to, as we've seen, he's second in passing yards right now. So I think if you put a ton of pressure on him early, force him into mistakes, like both still had 375 passing yards at the end of that game against BC. So I think you need to play the pass game a lot more aggressively than you do need to worry about the running game. Nobody's really been able to run it like Toronto has.
And they've got to worry about Tim White because I think Tim White is capable of having a big game. So that's another player that could be an X factor for the Cats. So I see the Argonauts winning this game 23-20. I think it's going to be a nail biter. And we'll wrap this up with our final segment, Nick. CFL Week 7 predictions. We've got Edmonton, Ottawa, the rematch this time in Ottawa, Winnipeg at Saskatchewan, Toronto and Hamilton, and BC and Calgary. What's your thoughts?
Okay, I'll go first. I have Ottawa over Edmonton. I have Saskatchewan over Winnipeg at home. I have Toronto over Hamilton, 64-14. I'm just kidding. That was how much we lost by at our home opener in 2019. I doubt that's going to happen, but if BC was able to crush Hamilton, I would, for once in my life, like to see a game like that where you go into your rival stadium and completely dismantle them. But I don't think we're going to do it because we never do that. And then I have BC over Calgary in Calgary.
All right. I have Edmonton getting their first win over Ottawa for Jarius Jackson's first win as an intern coach. Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. Winnipeg's played well. They've won 2 in a row. And Shea Patterson is still kind of a rookie quarterback, so I got to go with the Blue Bombers. They're too good of a team to be under 500, so I think Winnipeg gets their 3rd win in a row. And then Toronto Hamilton, I've already mentioned the Argos are going to win this game 23-20, and it's going to come down to the last second kick again. And as much as I miss Boris Beatty, I think the Argos, the kicker they have right now, Liam, yeah, I think he's been real solid. I think he's only missed 1 kick this year. I call him Mr. Reliable, Mr. Steady, and I think he might be the factor in this game. And then BC and Calgary. I've got to go with those BC Lions. So Edmonton, Winnipeg, Toronto, and BC to win in Week 7.
Well, I think that just about wraps it up. We spent a lot of time previewing the Hamilton game this week, thankfully with Rick joining us, which has been a really nice change of pace. I think we didn't dwell too much on the past and are looking towards the future, which is funny coming from a historian like me. So thanks to everybody who's tuned in tonight. We are looking forward to this game on Saturday night. Kickoff, I believe, is at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Yep. So
on TSN, and TSN 1050 was Mike Hogan and Ben Grant on radio.
Yep. No Thursday night game tonight or this week. If you're going to watch, there's back-to-back Friday night games. The Saskatchewan game is going to be the latter one. The Saskatchewan-Winnipeg, the Edmonton-Ottawa one is going to be the early one. So it's a doubleheader Friday night, no game Thursday. And then the other 2 are single headers on Saturday and Sunday night.
And we had a former NFL tight end watch us too tonight. Byron Chamberlain, who was a 2-time Super Bowl champion with the Denver Broncos, was watching our show. He's been a guest on my show, and I want to say thank you to him, and want to say thank you to everyone watching this live streamed on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter/X again, now that I get the premium plan, and on Instagram. And thank you to everyone listening to the show on all the audio platforms and on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM in Noonan, Georgia, the home of Southern Talk and Sports. And they love the CFL talk with Rod Peterson in the daytime, and then on our show at nighttime on Wednesday nights as well. And I want to say thank you to our special guest today, Rick, who's a season ticket holder from the Hamilton Tiger Cats and has his own podcast show on YouTube. I want to say thank you to Rick coming on as well, Nick. And final thoughts before we wrap this up for episode 6.
Yeah, just keep in mind we've got a little bit of extra content this week between my video essay and Chris's interview. So keep in tune for that. Other than that, we will see you guys in a week's time. And as always, we'll talk about how the game on Saturday went, and we'll look ahead to what the Toronto Argonauts have in store going forward.
Thank you so much, Nick. And the next Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, sponsored by BarryCollin.com on Monday, July 26th 2nd at 12 p.m. Eastern. Special guest is going to be Dave Campbell, the color analyst on the Edmonton Elks radio broadcast on CHED 6:30 a.m. in Edmonton. And we're going to be talking Edmonton Elks football and a little bit about Dave Campbell's career as their color analyst as well. Nick, thank you so much for coming on, and Rick, our guest, and we'll see you back here next week for episode 7 of the Argo Bounce live audio show. As always, Nick, go Argos.
Go Argos. Take care, everyone.
Good night, Nick. And thank you, everyone, again for watching this Argo Bounce live audio show on live stream and on audio and on WQEE 99.1 FM. Hope everybody enjoys the CFL games this weekend, and we'll see you back here next week with Nick Small, and we'll talk about the Argos Tiger Cats game and hopefully an Argos win as well. And as always, go Argos, and have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you back here next week for the Argo Bounce live audio show, which is on WQEE 99.1 FM.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the